Boom! Hello, legends. Have I got a great co-host for you tonight, Mr. Martin Maloney. Let's just take a look.
This is Castletown, my home. There's no women, there's no work, and no crack. The one bit of good news is Ireland have qualified for the Euros out in Poland.
First, they took Ireland by storm.
Where are you going?
Going to watch the boys in green. Enjoying the summer, trying to master self-belief. Yeehaw!
Now, the Hardy Bucks
You'll be out there with the rest of them on the way to Poland now. It's a matter of national pride this time. Your country needs you.
are hitting Europe. They're going to support the boys in green.
You owe me €4,000.
Any chance you can burn me a copy of that, is there?
$4,000.
This February,
We don't get that across the border to Poland in the next 2 days.
You don't even want to know, man.
these small-town Bucks
Do you know how to speak English? Is that French, is it? And then if we're coming back, this is where the magic happens.
You never even had a chance to blow my vuvuzela.
are taking on Europe.
Never get the ball into the first place.
Martin, how are you, mate?
Not too bad, Chris. Thanks for having us on, mate.
Hey, absolute pleasure. I'll tell you what, just watching the trailer for your movie there just makes me want to watch Hardy Bucks all over again.
I think there's nothing stopping you, Chris. Someone's uploaded them all illegally to YouTube, and which I don't have a problem. I mean,
All right, if you
pirate yourself.
if you host the show, mate, I'll go. I'll go and watch all my copies.
Fair dues, Chris. Fair dues. Nice to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. It has. And how's Sweden treating you? Still expensive for the old beer?
Oh yeah, but if you know the right people, you can get concessions. If you're good with the Blarney, you know, it's grand. It's snowing now as well, so there's been like a foot of snow in the last few days, so it helps to brighten the place up. It is as it should be, Chris.
Yes.
The summer's cold in the winters.
They do They do winter well in Scandinavia, don't they?
They do, yeah. But like everyone kind of, it reflects the society. So in summertime, you'll see everybody out and about in full bloom, and everyone just goes into hibernation mode then over the winter. But that's grand. Like it is what it is. Stockholm in winter.
Yes, and there's that on Netflix, the Stockholm syndrome. They've got the geezer that actually, that's where the expression came from. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I know what you're referring to. Wasn't it like a bank robbery where at the end of the bank robbery, they had basically everyone had got in touch, or like they basically got to know the guy on a human level and therefore understood his motives for. I mean, it's not so like if you have a captured audience like that, you know, it's people call it Stockholm syndrome, but the phenomena itself it's not too difficult to understand. Like if you are someone who find yourselves in a situation like, let's say, a bank robbery, and there's a standoff and a siege for a while, then someone's gonna eventually try and open a dialogue with you, and a bank robber could be like, look, I've got bills to pay, and it was an act of desperation. And then as long as there are indeed nice criminals, smooth criminals, as Michael Jackson would have once said, but you can understand like the how hostages would then find a kind of a common ground with the robber, for example. So I haven't seen it, but I remember looking it up.
It's called mate, it's called Clark, the Netflix thing. And for anyone watching, if you got a Netflix account, it's really good. It's the guy, like I say, that he did this series of robberies back in Sweden. It was like 70s, I think, maybe coming on to 80s. And the guy he's just out there. For conservative Sweden, he's just does his own thing, including robbing any bank that he decides. But what I wanted to bring that back to current affairs and talk about Stockholm.
Going with this one.
Say again.
I think I know where you're going with this one.
Well, did you see the mate? I'm going to say quote unquote because I literally since the events in New York and Washington back along, I don't believe anything on the news. I don't watch the news.
What, you mean Building 7 and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm. Don't say that. Don't say that too many times. We got demonetized. The last video I did was on that very subject, and guess immediately demonetized.
Oh, I don't even bother. I don't even bother monetize my videos anymore, to be honest with you. So I just do it as a labor of love, and if someone wants to, donate a few quid on the old PayPal, fair dues. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's hard work. Oh, what I was going to say, it was the Israeli hostages. They're all being released, and mate, do you know what I say when you get those bizarre kind of scenes that just don't seem real? It almost seems like they're being acted, and they're turning around and they're hugging their I'll call it the hummus, the chickpea spread warriors. They're turning around and they're hugging their chickpea spread warriors.
The tahini boys.
And yeah, and saying goodbye. Have you seen it?
I've seen clips of it. All right, yeah. Look, the thing is, there's three sides to every story. There is, let's say, to put it, my side, your side, and the truth. There's I think certainly the media it's not, you'd be doing well to find completely unbiased, objective media. And I think that's what we really need from media is basically you shouldn't pick sides. You should always side with the truth, even if the truth goes against what you're led to believe. That's my own personal philosophy. And that's what I've discovered from many years of going down multiple rabbit holes over the years. I don't even know why. I was always quite into paranormal kind of stuff and extraterrestrial things as a kid. I used to get this thing called X Factor, which was before Simon Cowell started his TV show there. But it used to be called, you might remember it was out every 2 weeks, fortnightly. It was like a binder you get, and like one episode or one, had spontaneous combustion, Chukaprika, Loch Ness Monster, all these different, some of them that were blatantly fake, other things that were unexplainable. It was all part of the kind of the mystery of unexplained events and that kind of thing. So I kind of always was into that kind of phenomena. And it was my friend Tom, back 2009, we were out in the pub. He just kept shouting, Rothschilds. And we were like, what are you on about, man? Look it up, man, look it up. And then then it was the old incident in America, which really kind of got me just outraged and, telling everyone. And I was that guy at many a dinner party who was like, no, but you don't understand. And after a while, I was just like, okay, I'm probably sound like a real melt. But there are certain things out there that aren't covered by media because they're covering for the people doing these massive heists, for example.
Well, Martin, let's talk about that. I said to you before, didn't I? Let's talk about this chap. It's Mr. Kissinger. Rest in peace. There we go. Yeah.
Well, is that who Peter Sellers' character in Doctor Strangelove was based on? Like Kubrick based that character on Henry Kissinger. And they say the good die young. I mean, the likes of himself and Rockefeller, Soros, these big kingmakers, Klaus Schwab, all these guys. I think they know themselves that everything they've made in terms of monetary gains here on Earth, they've gotten it through having their hands soaked in blood. And I think people like that, they kind of know that at the end of life, whether they're spiritual or not, I think that, they might confess to be atheists, let's say, but I think somewhere in the back of their mind, they feel that kind of karmic law of we've done some pretty bad shit in our lives and caused a lot of misery. And I think that's why they want to stay alive as long as they can, and Yeah, he can't take it with him. He's gone. Same with Rockefeller. Was he like 104, something like that? You know, you can't take it with you, and you know it's better to be out with the shit munchers in the waiting to get into the nightclub than be hanging out with a bunch of VIP wrong'uns in a room upstairs. That's the way I perceive it anyway.
Well, talking about wrong'uns.
Go on.
Well, same subject.
Gary Glitter's back out, isn't he?
No, I'm just going to say these guys are all Sabbateans. I don't know if that's a concept you're familiar with.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Sabbatean Frankist? They call it the Sabbatean Frankist cult.
In Eastern European bad boys.
Yeah. That sounds a bit. I mean, all of them. Your Soros, your Zuckerberg, all these movers and shakers. They're all in a club, aren't they? And it's not a club for the benefit.
Club, isn't it? George Carlin would say.
Yeah. In fact, 1 second.
There's a reason. There's a reason for this. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Yeah, just played George then. So, yeah, George was kind of referring to your Ivy League, going to the same tennis club, sharing investment portfolio kind of stuff. He probably didn't escalate his pitch to the level of these really are a dark cult. So much so, I think most people would probably struggle to get their head around it, Martin, would they not?
Well, you know, in the Bible, and don't quote me on what I'm quoting from the Bible, I'm paraphrasing it, but and I can't remember where it was written, but I did hear that it was easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. And I think what that basically, I used to always think, okay, someone, let's say, who's made a few quid from his own business, you know, that, yeah, he would be by definition, let's say someone has, I don't know, a logistics company and he's worth on paper about 8 million, fairly well to do. That isn't considered, like, I mean, the money, the likes of, I don't know, like Bezos, for example, yeah, like, or Soros, so one of these guys, there's guys who have even more money out there. Like that is, I think, to get to that level of money, you know, you have to do some, or you have to get other people to take care of some problems to make go away. And I think, you know, that the further you go up in those circles, the more ruthless that they become. And I think they probably have a, you know, do you ever hear people, the way they talk about how deer on a reserve need to be culled in order to, you know, like this whole Malthusian, like Bill Gates aspect of things where, you know, they talk about the world is overpopulated. But when you think about it, there is apparently 8 billion of us living on the planet. But to be fair, you know, most of the resources are completely squandered for profit. I mean, like there is, I mean, without going into the whole kind of egalitarian John Lennon, imagine there's no possession kind of thing. And if you just say there is a finite amount of resources, but if those things were managed properly, but, you know, more wants more, and those at the top want it all for themselves. It's like, you know, Bill Gates has a huge, massive yacht. Apparently, I don't know if it's true or not. I read that Zelensky had bought 2 mega yachts recently, and it's kind of like pretty good money for a man who was a comedian who ended up being like the president of a country with a very low GDP, but with a hell of a lot of billions being sent in from US taxpayers and English taxpayers and Canadians and Swedes. You know, because even like Sweden has now decided to join NATO, which I think is a ridiculous idea, because I think, you know, they had a neutral stance. Whether or not they were providing intelligence to other organizations, I can't say, but the fact that now they have indeed put themselves in for reason to be targeted. I think most of the Western communications run through the east side of Sweden, so that does make Sweden a target for attacks in the future. If a hot war does kick off, it becomes a legitimate target in the future, whereas they were neutral for over 100 years. And even in Ireland, they're trying to get, you know, they're really trying to stoke up the idea of Ireland joining NATO as well.
My God, you named 2 countries that are bloody hotspots. We're going to talk about that. I just want to say, look, mate, that's the one you want to get.
What's that? Oh, the Isle of Oh, nice, man. Where'd you get that from?
Islay whiskey snooze.
On the old yacht the port in Japia. That's fancy stuff. Like, where'd you get that from?
I ordered it online, mate. I think there's a shop online called Snooze Line. You can order it worldwide. I will say I haven't used this stuff for years now, but when I used to use Snooze, friends at home, Snooze is Swedish. I don't even want you. It's a Swedish form of tobacco. It's very, very popular in Scandinavia and
bags that you stick under your lip.
Yeah, I like the loose stuff though, mate. I'm old school.
Yeah, it's very impractical to use that kind of stuff because it'll get stuck up in your teeth and go. It's like brown goo all over the place, and you gotta go. And
I'm quite lucky there. The way my mouth's set up, I can have the snooze in my top lip, and you just some people when they smile, you just see this black, don't you?
Yeah, it's like you've just been munching a whole fistful of caviar,
mate. I'm sort of yeah, mate. I am drunk for ages. I am potato. You know, I'm sort of really.
Your liver must be doing well.
Well, I'm really embracing the. I hate to call it a spiritual battle because it sounds poncy, but you know what I mean. I'm really the esoterics is probably a better. You know, I'm really taking a. You know, I'm enjoying investigating this side of life that for 48 years I didn't even know existed. And then
well, I mean, the thing is, I think, okay, it's some of it's so, you know, I do believe that there is, you know, like I was raised Catholic, and obviously the Catholic Church has committed some absolute heinous acts throughout the ages. But I think fundamentally, you know, like I was raised with, you know, knowing the difference between right and wrong, and I think there's something to it, you know, and I can't really, you know, like for me in terms of like spirituality and that, I've always thought there's something beyond what we can see, you know, and but what that is, I don't know, but I think there's definitely something happening out there that you know, it's easy just to write everything off as it's all a load of make believe, but like it's kind of like the easy way out.
Well, it's been more real than that for me, Mark. It's a physical fit. You know, for me, it's been a physical thing. I've literally sensed the changes in the chemicals in my body and the answers. And I mean, if you'd have told me even probably 3 years ago that I'd be listening to podcasts about sacred geometry and alchemy and, you know, what is the nature of matter, I would have looked at you rather, you know, a bit strange because it just I didn't
well,
even I wouldn't
isn't it? You know, and you kind of like if you think about the fact that when the sun hits a leaf, that the photons from the sun go through slits in the leaves, and that, you know, and that basically helps when plants breathe in carbon, the activity from the photons help when the plant breathes in the carbon, that photosynthesis actually helps to bind carbon to the cells of the plant. You know, just the fact that everything in the natural ecosystem works in such a balance, and you kind of think to yourself, well, how is, you know, if you look at the golden ratio can be found in a crest of a wave, a hurricane, in like you know, broccoli, or, you know, on your thumbprint, you know, or the Fibonacci sequence is found, and it almost seems like that some sort of natural fingerprint from the creator, you know. And I kind of feel like, you know, the idea of the Big Bang and Stephen Hawking, and you know, is science basically just is it deconstructing and dissecting the divine, and it basically tells you it can see these processes and it knows why it's happening, but it's basically taking isolated cases and then explaining them instead of explaining everything as a whole. And I think sometimes science is good for obviously science, it brings you engineering and chemistry and physics and this kind of thing, but I think it also removes the basis of creation from it as well.
I think you're right, mate. It's such synchronicity that you mentioned chlorophyll, because one of the last podcasts I listened to on a great channel I listen to a lot, called Video Advice, which sounds really crap. Sounds like it's going to give you advice on how to fix your VHS player or something, but it's not. It's all
handy back in '87.
Yeah, it's all like allegorical kind of,
what's it called again? Video Advice.
It's just a channel called Video Advice, and I will promote it to the hills, because
about 1 million odd subscribers.
Oh, he's got a lot now, and
because I remember stumbling across that channel, and I was like, God, this is some quite esoteric. It was one about like hand signals, or like the different positions of your hand in certain situations, like talking, by holding pressure points or doing this kind of stuff with your. It was just basically, it was a video like that, and I was watching it, and I was looking at the name of the video. It was like Video Advice, and it was like very generic name for something that's so nuanced.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but one of the recent videos, Martin, I was watching, and I just love it when something drops in, like the fruit machine, it just drops. And they were just talking about how we don't understand the chlorophyll, and don't ask me to get this right, but how our DNA thrives off it, because of the resonant frequencies. And this is
doing, like if you live in a city, you're bombarded with 5G, 4G electromagnetic frequencies, like was it FLVs? Is it the or like the low vibrational frequencies? I mean, I think like the pollution of, like, if you're living in a city, you're drinking recycled water, you're eating takeaway food, getting pissed, and the stress and the cortisol, and just and all that has been upped even more, because it feels like our future has been stolen by just predatory financial institutions that are, I think, basically using their financial leverage to, first of all, enrich themselves to obscene levels of wealth, but also it's like if you kind of throttle prosperity for the general population, and you do so through interest rate hikes and devaluation, or basically making the price of things, like for example, rent. If you look at Dublin, right, at the moment, for the last couple of years, Dublin has had a really big problem with the lack of living space. The lack of, so you'll have an apartment, let's say a 100-foot apartment in a suburb of Dublin, and there will be a queue down the road just to view this apartment. And so basically, instead of building residential areas that are badly needed in Dublin, they've just been building hotels all over the city. And then, funny enough, it seems that they've been turning these hotels into asylum centers. And the people who are making money off that are some of themselves politicians and businessmen and hoteliers. And so I think that's why there was such uproar there at the weekend in Ireland, or last week, because I think this has been bubbling under the surface for a long time, because you've got people who've turned the asylum industry into a very lucrative business model. But if you look at the stress that puts up, if you've been living in like a residential area in Dublin that for many years has been kind of economically disadvantaged, and all around it the place is becoming gentrified, the prices have been set up, you're gonna stress people out, and when you have a stressed population, you have a population then that are going to be more aggravated, and then that will lead to unrest, and unrest can eventually lead to conflict or civil war. And I think they're doing this all across the Western world. Like, look at the USA, the fentanyl problem they've got there, and the fact that the border is open. It's a porous border. Though when I went to the States a couple of months ago, they were giving me a hard time for coming in as a visitor, you know, and it just kind of makes you think, like, what the hell's going on? But all this, you see, I naively always thought when I was growing up, and until recently, until this epiphany hit me, that it's not about bringing up the third world or for want of a better word, the developing world. It was never about bringing their standard of living up to first world standard. It's actually what I think it is now, is to bring the Western world down to basically where you've got a two-tier society, a tier of people who were audaciously rich. I mean, they had a shortage of mega yachts last year because the amount of billionaires that were created off the back of the pandemic, in quotes, the pandemic, became so rich that they were looking for yachts. So imagine you have a shortage of mega yachts, but at the same time, I think over the pandemic there was a total global loss of capital to the working class was something like, I think it was, off the top of my head, 2.3 trillion, I think, and the collective billionaire class made 2.5 trillion. And what did that, I mean, you had Gerald Celente on, which you know, tip me hat to you, because that man's an absolute legend who calls it as it is, and he's been talking about this office retail space is gonna be the next thing to crash. When I was in New York in October, I was talking to people, like local guys who were running bars and that kind of thing, and businesses, saying that because people are working from home, they don't have the same footfall they used to have in Manhattan. So you got your bodegas on the corner shop who are losing out on revenue, and small businesses are going under everywhere. And another great documentary you should check out is Andrew Callahan from All Gas No Breaks and Channel 5 News. He did a documentary about San Francisco, which used to be the jewel in the crown, or like the Paris of the USA. And, you know, basically gentrification has come and absorbed like all the wealth by, you know, basically people who were working in normal jobs, or people who were residents of San Francisco had to leave San Francisco because they couldn't afford the rent. And on top of that, and you throw in the fentanyl crisis as well. Like, that place is, you've got people moving from all over America because of their lax recreational drugs policy or addiction, you know, instead of, you know, all the money they've spent, let's say, on Ukraine. I think, what is it, 140 billion on weaponizing the war in Ukraine, which should never have happened in the first place. But imagine how much that could have, if they'd taken 140 billion and redeveloped all of their inner cities and gave people work, like even if people were involved in building their own houses, but trained them, gave them tools in order to then, you know, be a tradesman to help upkeep these communities in the future. Just, you know, so much you could have done. Roads, infrastructure.
Martin, let me put something to you. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing, right? Undoubtedly, there's an awakening in the force. You know, you can see people are talking about stuff now openly that 5 years ago, well, I mean, as little as a year ago, the fact that Tucker Carlson, and there is a caveat here, but I'll get to that. The fact that Tucker Carlson is talking about that building that we mentioned, the one that fell out the skyline alongside the other two. He's talking about that on Redacted. You know, that was some. You know, he was a Fox News anchor, and he's coming out and saying Fox wouldn't talk about that. Then you've got the whole anti-Semitic thing. People are off with that now. You know, anytime you want to have an observation about what's going on in the world, you get called anti-this or anti-this or anti-the V, you know, and people are seeing it now. They're seeing that these are mechanisms to stifle dissent by trying to subject people to humiliation or, oh, I don't want to be. And
yeah, just the cancel culture aspect of it, you know, like the fact that, you know, you see, if you look at BlackRock and how they work, they're like an umbrella organization over smaller organizations, and the HR department of each smaller, you know, it's kind of like a Russian doll, but in a hierarchical system. So the messages coming from Larry Fink and BlackRock go into, they're the biggest stakeholders in most, even competing brands, let's say Pepsi and Coke. And there was a commercial where Pepsi was basically, it was last year, Santa Claus was driving his red truck, which is synonymous with Coca-Cola. And then he treats himself to a can of Pepsi. And I was like, ooh, that was a bit cheeky. And then I was like, no, it's not really, considering that BlackRock own the majority shares in both PepsiCo and Coca-Cola Company. So therefore, it's this created, it's created within inside that same ownership.
Mate, is that why Pepsi's blue and Coke is red? Is that because and boxing is blue and boxing is red? It's all that playing off the
Liverpool and Everton.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking in America, blue and red. Like the liberal, the Democrats and the Republicans, and I heard someone do a talk. What I was getting at, Martin, is at the same time as you clearly got people waking up, you've clearly got people now recognizing that there's this cabal.
Wake up, Chris. You see, what they want is people to be watching vapid shite on TV. Following sports teams. Look, I mean, I follow sport as well, but it's like, I was talking to a guy the other day, Greek guy, who was telling me that if you're seen wearing the wrong colors in another neighborhood, like let's say you got AIK, you've got Olympiakos and Panathinaikos in Athens, and if you're an Olympiakos guy going into a Panathinaikos or vice versa neighborhood, and they see you're trying to hide your colors, you'll get beaten up. And it could be like 8 versus 1. But imagine if people had that much, or even here in Sweden, you got Hammarby Football Club that will have a procession at the beginning of the season where tens of thousands of people will march with flares towards the football pitch. And you kind of think that is diverted energy from things that are more important. If people knew that the amount of like compound interest, what that does to us as a collective society, how much money, taxpayers' money, is being squandered. That, if people could get that kind of concentration of energy and wherewithal and direction to make a difference. And I think what you're seeing globally after Israel's collective punishment of Gaza, like for me, like, I'm on the side of peace. I don't want to see my fellow human beings kill each other, and especially, when you see children being killed. I mean, I can't even count how many dead kids I've seen on Twitter in the last couple of weeks, and to the point where I've got tears rolling down my face looking at the scenes coming out of there. And for you're seeing whole cities filled with protesters lately, and I think the Netanyahu is losing the narrative on
that's this. Another one that I meant to say in the awakening thing, that so many people. I mean, Israel can't come back from this one. They talk about like blotting your copybook. But at the same time, Martin, we have this situation where so many people are dumbed down. And what my question I'll just ask you is, so here's people awakening, and that's kind of clear to see, but at the same time, you got, and I'm not trying to be derogatory, I don't slag other people off. I'm on my journey, that's all I care about. If someone's out there and they're serial killers, nothing to do with me. That's their shit, right? If I'm not going to call people sheep. I was probably that person once in my life, But to say that society's been dumbed down is an understatement. And can the awakeners? Certainly, I prefer to talk about enlightenment these days because that's a step above being awake. But my point is, can the people waking up and moving towards enlightenment kind of outrun or outnumber the masses that are getting dumbed down at the same time?
Well, there's two things. First thing I'm going to say, so remind me of this, because I know I'm a great man for going off on tangents. First thing is I'm going to make 3 headings here and then explore 3 of them. The first thing I want to say is anybody who is at the cutting edge of the spear, whether it be present or past, they would have been isolated at the time until enough time had passed that people, I think a lot of it is fear, right? So the first one is being at the cutting edge of dissent or resistance. The second one is you have people who are waking up, but yourself, if you wake up, let's say, you're living a normal life, working, have a normal job, you have your routines, you have your weekends, and then you're back to work Monday to Friday. And that's your life, that's your lot. And someone comes along and tells you something that basically could open up a complete can of worms and change the way you look at the world, that leads on to you basically questioning absolutely everything you've been taught in school. That, for a lot of people, who I've met and I've had these conversations with, who have the intelligence and the capacity to take these things on, simply don't want to, even though they know that it's probably the way it really is, but choose to use, like, let's say, the Matrix as a cliched reference. Blue pill or red pill, which one do you want to pick? You take the blue pill and you go back to it and you live in ignorance, but in the back of your mind you're kind of like, yeah. But it's, you listen, if you're driving, let's say if you're driving in Ireland, you listen to the radio and it's the same news all the time. Some news that had happened, a man had been shot in a robbery in Dublin, and then it goes to the end of it, it's like, Manchester United will be playing Leverkusen in the 4th round of the Champions League. And it's like the weather. So it's like sports news. It's like, just keep the local news there and then sports news, and don't be, like the last thing, because I think most of our societies are basically ruled by transnational corporations, many of which the average person has no idea about. Like if you were to ask somebody on the street, do you know who BlackRock is? Do you know who Burns Stearns is? Do you know Goldman & Sachs? Do you know any of the derivative companies that are under their influence? They don't. But if you could, if you could ask someone, do you know who the latest signing for Arsenal is? They tell you who that is. Or they would tell you, like, which one of the Kardashians has got the latest branding deal. It's fucking trivial knowledge. It's like, it's useless information. But to divert people's passions into something that is meaningless certainly is the best. Like, if I was running the shop, then I would want, I'd be like, okay, let's bring in a lot of people with completely antithetical opinions and culture and drop them in the middle and then get them all fighting each other. Of course you're going to do that. Like, you've seen this channel Visegrad24 on Twitter. They're like a Polish aggregate of, they were like pro, Ukraine all the way. And anytime you try and say, look, peace should be the focus here, and not, oh, you're a Putin apologist, oh, you're a Vatnik, and you get all these NAFO arseholes with their little Shiba dog wearing like fucking tracksuit pants, using these daft memes. They're supporting the death of Slavic men and women, in combat. The Russians and the Ukrainians that were both, they had their troubles in the past, but basically they shouldn't be killing each other. They're the people who speak the same language and pretty much have very similar culture. But if you basically say, I'm on the side of peace, that was a psyop, I reckon. There was big money being pumped into the managing of discourse online to mob and pick on anybody who had that had actual good intentions for peace. And if you mention the fact that Boris Johnson came along in 2022 in April to destroy that the peace treaty that was going to be ratified between Russia and Ukraine, they would have been like, lies, propaganda. They're fucking dickheads, man. That's what they are. And it'd be nice just to round them all up, send them off to the front lines, see how hard they'd be then, getting mortared and shelled.
Exactly.
So the other thing before I was going to say about the tip of the spear, I remember David Icke once saying, when he was doing those London Real videos, about when you're at the cutting edge of the spear, it's a lonely place to be, because it's some of the things you're saying when you're starting a resistance or dissent of opinion, you'll be on your own. People won't not have anything to do with it until it's safe enough to do so. And then they'll be like, oh, I was on your side the whole time, mate. Yeah, you were doing great. No, so that was the other thing.
I said that to David when I chatted with him. I said, David, you once said that you couldn't walk down the street in Britain because the whole nation was laughing at you. I just want you to know I never laughed at you. I thought either he's going through some kind of transition phase in his life, in which case needs to be handled carefully, not humiliated on national TV. Or,
well, they did do, but he got his revenge on Wogan when he went back.
Yeah,
about Iraq being predicated on complete lies.
But that's all on record now. Once it's out there, you can't erase it. And now young people or the people in the freedom community can look at those interviews and see the evil in the BBC and see how they employ people like Terry Wogan, rest in peace, no disrespect, but non-thinking people. And you see how horrible they are, these ex-BBC people. I've even been asked on
the statue in the entrance to BBC with a man holding a naked boy.
Yeah.
Was waving nonce.
Yeah, the architect that created it had been arrested for those kind of crimes, and I just want to get back. It's just funny. I was looking at I just did a internet search for your name. It's really funny looking at you, the different ages. Some of these pictures that are on Google and the like.
Better her days.
Yeah, no, I mean you really do look like 16 in some. Not that I'm not a criticism. It's just fascinating.
And funny enough, when I was over here when I was 22, I had the long hair and a big thick red beard, and my 22nd birthday, and I remember some guy said to me, 22? I thought you were like 34.
Yeah.
No. So
I've just found our thumbnail from our first podcast. It's just
lives matter.
It's just come up. I haven't even got my picture on it. It's just you with some Hardy Buck stuff on it. But Martin, while I've got you on the show, let's talk about then. Let's not mention what happened in Dublin, because sorry.
I'm just gonna have to answer the door. So if you just take us off for a second.
No. Just you do what you need to do. Yeah, there we go. Yes, I wanted to chat with Martin, folks, because, sorry, in case you're wondering, this one I was getting up, folks, because Pontins has closed two holiday parks, and is this because they got an influx of asylum seekers to put up? I'll just say, Martin, Pontins have closed Prestatyn and Cambersands holiday parks.
Here. Alex, come.
Oh.
Sorry about this.
It's okay.
Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I've just, earlier, in case people thought I was going mental, when you were talking about immigration, two huge holiday camps have closed at Pontins. This is David Curtin on his Twitter. This normally precedes large arrivals. He's put foreign military-age men, but I've explained that military-age thing to people. The reason you see this influx of military-age men is once an asylum seeker gets right to remain in this country, or any country, well, I mean, certainly in Britain, they then go to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross do the paperwork to bring all their family across. This is why you see fighting age men, whether or not
So the men do the hard leg of the journey first.
Yes, exactly. You're not going to send your wife and kids on a yacht. But before I get slated, just to say, obviously it's also rather alarming to have a population of people with very different culture, morals, scruples, than you. Not always bad, sometimes, but you know, when we're because it's like the private security companies in the Middle East. First off, they started paying like ex-Marines like myself £500 a day to go over there and, you know,
your money.
Police the New World Order sort of thing. And then when they realized they could actually pay, like, you know, Bangladeshi people and Filipinos £2 a day to risk their lives doing the same job.
Yeah, or like building Dubai, what they've been doing there.
Yeah, and I doubt very much, you know, I mean, I'm judging here, but I doubt, you know, a Filipino or someone from Bangladesh is probably morally questions doing kind of private military contract work in the Middle East.
In terms of relative salary, you know, that would be probably considered as a good markup on what they were earning. See, the thing is, like, immigration is always a funny topic because, you know, often is the case, you'll get like left wing people of a left wing, you know, persuasion, who anytime they will just knee-jerk reaction be like, oh, that, you know, it's xenophobic. Like, I think basically but they don't look at the fact that these people are basically victims of globalization and bad foreign policy being used as a further tool of geopolitical chess. You know, like they're pawns in a bigger game of destabilization. And like the fact that they're being used and milked as part of an industry at the expense of tax. I mean, like, you have to ask, why do they want to leave these countries? Because like bad Western policy has led to their countries being destroyed, or having propped up dictators in there that have, you know, cracked down on their own citizens and then sold off all of their natural resources to Western companies. And, you know, look at Gaddafi, what they did to him, or Saddam Hussein. You know, like Gaddafi didn't want to sell oil to the US in fiat currency, the dollar, anymore, via the petrodollar, and he said, I want gold for my oil. And look what happened to him. And it's always it's always the same thing, isn't it? It's always like, oh, Gaddafi was committing war crimes. The Guardian reports, like, you know, I don't know what happened in Syria, for example, but I do know that Western intelligence had their operatives in there trying to destabilize Syria.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and he knew well, because I was watching an interview with him from 2006, and he knew well it was on the cards then, because right next door you had Iraq, which had been turned into a sectarian tinderbox at that stage. And like the first Gulf War, that was basically because the Kuwaitis started selling cheaper oil to the US, and then he went in for the border adjustment. But then they created a whole load of bullshit with that girl who said that she's seen babies being thrown out of the incubator. And I think it's funny, you see an awful lot of stories about like babies being killed, which will obviously rile up the sentiments of these people are monsters. Let's go in and, you know, completely eviscerate them and then take their resources afterwards. You know, like Saddam Hussein in 2002 declared that he was going to sell his oil in euros. He was warned not to by the UN. And then he was also blamed for having a hand to play in the fall of the dual buildings.
Yes.
Which he didn't. And what happened then? And then even before that war, you had the likes of Madeleine Albright, because they sanctioned a country. And when she was asked, is 500,000 dead children worth it? And she said the price was indeed worth it. You know, so you look at these people from the Middle East that would have been happy enough. Iran, the Shah of Iran, you know, like like when they talk about a 9/11, there was a 9/11 in Chile that was orchestrated by Kissinger when Pinochet came to power. And like I've a lot of one of my best friends is from Chile, and he told me that when he lived as a child in Chile, in Santiago, it wouldn't be, you know, like the way I was watching a video where there was a guy in the IDF was saying how when they go into the West Bank and they have a new recruit, they'll say, okay, we have intelligence on this house, this man here in this building, you were to go in there, middle of the night, kick down the door, separate him from his family, put a hood over him, and drive him away. Even though this guy was completely innocent, didn't do anything. And he goes, well, this is a twofold advantage to us. First of all, our new recruits are given a scenario that is as close to the real thing as possible. And the second upswing from that is the fact that you go into any house for no reason at night keeps people afraid, and it makes the people in that area wonder if they're next. That is by definition fascism of the highest order. You can't do that. But then, like when I was in the States as well, all the coverage on mainstream TV, mainstream news, certainly didn't mention anything about the Nekba, certainly didn't mention the fact that even Operation Shield's Edge in 2014 doesn't matter. Everything started from October the 7th. And objectively speaking, I think Hamas viewed the kibbutz as fair military targets. And I think the fact that if you keep, if they've lost people to airstrikes in the past and they're living in one of the largest concentration camps in the world, that they're probably thinking, right, it's better to be martyred, because I think a lot of them knew it was a suicide mission that day. And so when they went across, many of them were killed, but I guess they were, ready to do what had, in their case, had to be done.
Martin, are you free can you talk for like another 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, I can.
Because what I want to say is that you just mentioned something that I'd love to discuss, but we can't do it on YouTube, and that is the authenticity of that very narrative. The other thing as well is I want to talk about the Dublin thing. Again, there's aspects of that we can't talk about on here, especially when it comes to young children. But I got friends. What I'm going to do now is go over to Locals with Martin, to our Locals platform, so Martin and I can just speak without me constantly thinking we're going to get kicked.
Yeah, I was on free off my channel. I was on my last strike though. The final one, they pulled it, and I was glad I had it backed up to Odyssey. I had Leilana Dowding and Gareth Ike on with me, and literally like an hour after going up, it was like, that's your final strike, and they deleted the video. I couldn't even see my own video that I did. So like the YouTube censorship is just it's gone off the charts.
Yes. And I protect this channel, Martin, because
you've been growing it, nurtured it for a long time.
Well, everything good that I can give to people, and to be honest, I'm more, I can see the answer now is in I'll call it the warrior.
Rumble, and they're trying to go after Odyssey, because like you said earlier on, people are waking up, and when people wake up and they realize that they've been lied to, and the people they were told were on the side, the righteous side, were actually the villains all along. That's going to, like
they're going to get desperate, mate, aren't they?
Yeah, and they are getting desperate, and that the entire, I don't think all of the politicians from both opposition parties in the Western world, they're all compromised. I think anybody who gets into any position, a high position of power, you go against the narrative, and you're canned, whether figuratively or occupationally, you're taken out.
Yeah.
The thing is with me, I haven't been. I have been, whether I cancelled myself, no one wants to touch me. I mean, they didn't want to touch us anyway, because what we did with Hardy Books was so anti-establishment, and it was so raw, and it was so universally loved by many different kind of socio-economic backgrounds. And, it was basically, it was raw, it was honest, it was funny. And we didn't pull any punches, and it did cause a lot of ruffled feathers. But I think, we were never even invited into any high positions in the acting game or entertainment, because they knew we were too wild. And I would rather speak my mind and have to hustle like everyone else than have some cushy number where I knew if I said the wrong thing, I'd be cancelled. So I'd like, fuck them. I think to be able to speak your mind and look yourself in the mirror and know that you're a man of convictions and have the authenticity and the courage to say these things is more important than taking the hush money and living a luxurious lifestyle but having to walk on eggshells the whole time.
Yeah, it's like you can have the world and you'll have nothing. We've heard that before. Martin, listen, let's go over the locals.
Yeah.
Want to chat with you there. I've just been shown
down the local here.
Yeah, I wish it was, mate. I want to chat about the Irish Army are now supporting the Garda, which I find is quite interesting in light of recent events. I want to talk about this. He's not actually the mayor of Limerick, I understand, but this chap's been causing some upset. He said anyone that protests immigration should be strung up and basically, and someone had to say, councillor, you're not allowed to say such things in the chamber. But
that lad.
Say again.
Is he from the Philippines? That councillor?
Yeah, he looks like it. But his name, well,
that's how people would be dealt with, like drug dealers under Duarte. You know what I mean? It'd be like, yeah, just take him out on the street. I think he's basically taken that hardline Philippine style of rough justice.
Yes. So, friends at home, absolutely loved chatting with Martin. If you haven't seen Hardy Bucks, get out there and find yourself a copy. One of the funniest.
It's on YouTube as well. I think it's called Molotov. Whoever that person has uploaded the channels. Also, do you mind if I plug my channel as well?
I've put a link. We're just going to do that next. Martin's channel, folks. There's a link below if you like these kind of chats. Martin, did you want to say a bit?
Yeah, well, I'll be going live again on my channel at about 11 o'clock GMT. If anyone wants to, I basically mostly just chat with the chat group or in the chat, and sometimes play a few tunes and have a bit of a laugh. Really, the last few weeks have been a bit serious because obviously I've been consuming very serious things online, and that was more so at the forefront of my mind at the time. But hopefully tonight should be a bit more laid back and a bit more jovial, I'd hope.
Yes.
Plus, I think you helped me get some of the geopolitical issues out of me system as well, Chris. Fair play to you. I know I have to say you've done some great work on your channel as well. Had some big names on here, like.
Yeah, mate, I've come a long way. You know, I've come a long way myself, and I just want to be in service. You know, I can understand now. When I look back at my life, and I've got no regrets, but I didn't understand the importance of being in service. It's kind of interesting being on service on a platform like YouTube. When you started off, I mean, I've always told like the veteran story. I've never glorified war. I've always said to the youngsters out, if you join up, please don't say you're doing it for freedom and democracy, because it's actually the opposite in this.
Well, funny enough, I was listening to Scott Ritter was doing a video recently, and he was saying about how if you take your sons or daughters and you put them off to war, and he was in the Marines himself, and he says, like, they break you as a person. That person who went into it is a very different person coming out. And then, they're often sent to do things that aren't in the interest of defending the state, and then when they come back, then there's PTSD and feelings of guilt and rage, and, and they're just basically broken people when they come back, and a lot of them end up on the streets or end up, with injuries or psychological injuries, and they turn to drugs to just try and escape that. And then it's really sad.
Yes, it is. Right, brother, let's go over to locals. Friends, if you're not on a locals, there's a link below. Please hop on it. We're having big success over there with people that they want to know more. They just want, and I can't I thoroughly recommend learning more. Otherwise, you stay at fourth dimension consciousness, folks, getting angry, bashing your head at the wall, wondering why you can't wake people up. And you know, there is life after those feelings that we've all been through. If you could please like and subscribe, folks, I'd really appreciate it. Support us on either Patreon, Locals, or become a YouTube member. And that just leaves me to say, Martin, thank you very much. Stay on the line. And much love to Martin and much love to you all. Cheers, cheers.